Okay, welcome to the Saucy Scribes podcast. Yay!
Woo!
We're your hosts. I'm Alex, your resident reading psycho who has read way too many fantasy books. Last year I read over 140 books.
Insane. My name is Ashley. I am a crystal-loving cat lady who Alex got into reading fantasy romantasy books, and now I too am hooked.
And I am Allie. I'm an aspiring author and a good friend to these two awesome ladies. And Alex got me into the fantasy and romantasy genre in January. And so now it is April and I've already read like 7 or 8 books. So thanks for that, Alex.
Let's go.
You are so welcome. I'm definitely the instigator of the group.
Yes, she is. And here we are.
And
The
I
book
love
pusher.
It. So happy. Book pusher.
Yes. I mean, especially in this time of need in this world.
Yes, absolutely.
Escape it.
And if you are watching and not just listening, my cat Mozart just made a nice little appearance on the screen. But that's
Broccoli's cousin.
Broccoli's
Yes,
cousin.
Broccoli's cousin. If you have read not this series, but another series, which we love so much.
So much.
So much.
For our first episode, we are going to cover When the Moon Hatched by Sarah Parker. We are so excited. We chose this as our first book because it is so meaty. It has so much amazing world building, and it really needs a deep dive before the next book comes out next year.
Yes.
So the other fun part about our podcast, for if you love to meet up with your girlfriends too, is we're going to do themed cocktails or wine to every episode. So does everyone have their cocktail?
Yes.
This week, we were inspired by Essie's Buttermint Loaf and Bogsberry Jam that she makes for Raeve. We don't have bogsberries, but I figured they could be similar to a blackberry, so here we have a classic take on a bogsberry bourbon smash. Cheers, and please drink responsibly.
Cheers, ladies.
Also, our Patreon is live. If you love our show, please consider subscribing to our Patreon as a first-year scribe for $5 a month and get early access to ad-free episodes and a digital booklet of all of our cocktails each book. This is a way to support our show and help us continue to bring this amazing romantasy content to life. And while you're at it, please rate and review our podcast wherever you are listening.
Before we dive in, we need to give a spoiler warning. We will be discussing the entire book and anything that Sarah Parker has said in interviews as well. If we reference another series, spoiler, we will give another spoiler sound in the episode so that you can skip ahead.
And we would like to warn everyone that many books within this genre may contain emotionally challenging content, including discussions of trauma and violence, as well as mature themes. So, the Saucy Scribes would like to issue a blanket trigger warning to alert our audience that the content discussed may be emotionally upsetting or distressing. For this specific book, When the Moon Hatched by Sarah Parker, the trigger warnings are located in the back of the book. Please take a look to ensure you are comfortable with the content we are discussing.
All right, and so let's start diving into our segments. So each week we're going to have a rotating segment that changes, and for the first week of every book, we're going to do a world building segment called Wide World of Magic, just to give everyone like a brief overview of the world that we're diving into.
Which
so
is
here
quite
is
complex.
our Wide World
Yes.
of Magic segment for When the Moon Hatched.
She's beat.
All right, this planet that we're on is very different from Earth. It was created from the 5 gods, think earth, wind, water, and fire, plus ether, which I like to think of as the Force from Star Wars. The earth god is named Boulder. The wind and air goddess is named Claude, which I looked up, and the closest thing I could find was that it's a Middle English surname for cloud, but there's also in Urban Dictionary a person who's bad luck, clumsy, and has problems following direction and listening in general, which I feel like is kind
On
of
brand.
Claude in this
Yeah,
book.
on brand.
So on brand. There's the water goddess named Rain, which sounds like rain. The fire god is named Ignis, which is Latin for fire. And the ether god is named Salus, which comes from the Latin meaning of heaven, sky, or atmosphere, which is kind of like what he is. He's kind of everything in between everything else.
Great.
During creation, they created their favorite beings of the world, dragons. And I think we can all relate.
Yes,
What they
favorite.
didn't foresee was that dragons died and they would rise up into the sky and become a moon. Randomly, these moons started falling from the sky, and the gods deduced it was Salus's fault. They attacked Salus and trapped him in an etherstone, and in doing so, tore his silver cloak, so maybe the gods are corporeal at some point, and these torn pieces floated into the sky as ribbons that orbit their planet. These ribbons are what the population uses to track their days, since their planet does not rotate like Earth. Then they entrusted the Etherstone to a family line that would have the power to contain it. Parker did give us a break and explained the time frames in her dictionary of this world. For a refresher, an aurora cycle is a day. There are 1,000 days in a year or phase, and our story begins over 5 million years or phases after Salus was entombed in his stone. We don't know the average life of a fae, but we can deduce that Raeve is 144 years old in our story, and that's fairly young. And while Parker says her fae are not immortal, they do live for a very long time. There are 3 trispheres of this world, and yes, I made that word up. The burn, the fade, and the shade. The burn is where the sun sits next to this world, and therefore is the hottest. So think of desert heat, but it's also known to have severe storms sprouting rainforests, so it's kind of like all the climates you would find on our equator. Saber scythes are native to the burn and have scales blackened by the sun with a ferocious temper. The shade is where the sun can't reach the planet. It is extremely dark and extremely cold. They get no daylight. The only light they get is from the silver of war ribbons and moons. The moon plume dragons are native to the shade and have scales of silver and white. They're considered the hardest to acquire an egg for their brilliance, cunning, and ferocity. The fade is in the center and always has a sky full of sunset colors where light meets dark. It's on the colder side, but not as cold as the shade. The entire fade is enclosed in a stone wall on each side that would look like a belt on a map, with sky bridges going across to each side. Molten maw dragons are native to the fade and just as colorful as the sky, the most even-tempered of dragons and easiest to get an egg. Now we're going to dive into the brief politics. There are 3 king brothers who rule over these trispheres of the world in present day in our story. The fade is ruled by King Caddoc Vagar. He's married to Dorothea and they have a son, Prince Turin, who no one has seen the prince in many phases and he's believed to have gone mad. The kingdom also has a guild of nobles who preside over trials and make important decisions. This kingdom is known to be corrupt and power-hungry. They conscript their magical children into the army, and its citizens have very little power. There's a rebellion group known as the Fier Da'ath trying to destabilize the king's rule and rescue children from its grasp. The Shade is ruled by King Tyroth Vagar, twin to King Caddoc. He has a daughter, Kazari, who also descends from the line of royals entrusted with the Etherstone, whose family formerly sat on the throne. King Tyroth is a cruel king with a heart said to fester from the loss of his wife, Elwyn. We told you there'd be spoilers. The burn is ruled by our favorite MMC, Con Vagar. He is brother to both of our other kings and has a sister who lives with him in the burn who also hates their siblings, Vea. While rumors make him out to also be a cruel and violent king, that is the front he puts out to the other kingdoms so his brothers stay out of the burn. He killed his evil father to take over the burn and has made it a place of safety and acceptance. There's a neutral land called Botham, ruled by the Tri-Council, that helps make decisions to better help all the kingdoms when they cannot agree. These are all 3-beaded, accomplished Roonies who hold great power but are not royalty. We are unsure in this first book if this council is honest or corrupt. Okay, lastly, we'll dive into the magic. You're either born being able to hear the creator's songs and have magic, or you can't hear them and you're called a null, and in some kingdoms your ear is clipped. You wear a colored bead in your ear if you live in the Fade, or anywhere on your body if you live in the Shade or Burn, denoting what god you can hear and command. Red for Ignos, blue for Rain, brown for Boulder, and clear for Claude. The louder you can hear God's songs, the more powerful you are. That's why even if you speak to Claude, you may not be able to steal the air from someone's lungs the way Raeve can. Spoiler warning for the Empyrean series. It's kind of like how in Empyrean, when Riddick can freeze a wyvern's insides, but not all ice wielders have that ability. It's something that, there's different levels of power, basically.
Yeah.
Gnolls can become Roonies, who are people who learned Salus's written language and can use magic through the use of runes. I don't know why all Gnolls wouldn't become Roonies, but maybe it's a difficult path not everyone is suited for. So if you're a plain Gnoll, you're really just completely defenseless in this world, and you're at the bottom of the food chain in most kingdoms. Other magical abilities are a bloodlace, someone who can track and use your blood, a mind weft, someone who can read your mind, and a truth tune, someone who knows if you're telling the truth. If you are powerful and a daredevil, you can steal a dragon's egg to raise it or hop on and claim an adult dragon. If you become so bonded with your dragon, you can also bend their dragon fire to your will, a magic that is seen as more of a myth, and this is called being a dagamorg. And now I'm going to hand it over to Allie for our brief summary of the chapters we're going to cover today.
So today we are diving into the prologue through chapter 22. So grab your cocktails and your quills because this world is soaked in rebellion and steeped in myth. And absolutely pulsing with heartbreak. We open in the Fade. It's a brutal land ruled by the cruel Vagor kings. Through the eyes of our fierce, sarcastic, emotionally scarred protagonist, Raeve, we are thrown into the heart of an absolute rebellion. She is an assassin for the resistance group the Fier de Ath. She is sharp-tongued, deadlier than most, and guided by a burning need for justice. But don't get it twisted. Raeve doesn't just trust the Fier de Ath. She knows that they do not care about her, and they just want her for what she can do for them. And guys, this girl has been through it. Loss after loss. She has learned or been taught, either way, that love is dangerous and the grief is a weight that never lightens for her. Her emotions are buried deep beneath a metaphorical icy lake, and no one, not even her bright and lovable roommate Essie, is allowed too close. And alongside Rave's story, we get glimpses into the world's creation, tales of elemental creators, betrayal, and a long history told through the diaries of Elwyn Nuvan. And her journey mirrors Rave's in just absolutely haunting ways. Both women are trying to protect the vulnerable in the world that doesn't make it easy to be vulnerable in this world. And then comes the heartbreak. So in chapters 11 through 22, Raeve finds Essie stabbed and dying. And it's a moment that absolutely crushes her. And instead of healing, Raeve doubles down on her isolation. She cuts herself off, even gets rid of Knee, which is a magical parchment lark carrying a simple aching message that says, I need you. And so then Raeve sends it back with a cold reply and it says, no, you don't. And I was, you guys, just so it's a devastating symbol of Rave's choice, and she's choosing safety over vulnerability, loneliness over love, and all through this, political tension is just rising. And this is where we get to meet Khan. Yes. And this is also where Princess Kaisari comes in, who we find out is falling for the literal ancient god, Salus, one of the banished creators, as we know how Alex had talked about in the summary of the magic. So lore says that he's going to destroy the world. So as we all know, love never seems to care for warnings. So then Ragzaros comes into the picture, and he is brutal. And he's merciless, methodical, and absolutely determined to crush the resistance. And he is literally everything that Raeve is fighting against, and possibly her greatest threat yet. And by the end of chapter 22, Raeve is just raw, grieving, alone. And the questions that I think linger for this is, what will it take Raeve to let herself love again, especially after Essie? And in a world this broken, is justice or love even possible?
I think we're going to be trying to answer those questions every episode of the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So on that note, let's dive straight into our next segment, which is our Threads of Theory segment.
Where we
discuss foreshadowing theories and all the juicy stuff all of us nerds love to talk about.
Woo, on our group
this
chat.
This is what everybody wants to hear anyway.
I know. All the other stuff is just for people who have like kind of read the book and now
They've dabbled.
They read the book a while ago and now they want to get back into it, or like hear the theories and stuff, and so that way they're not lost.
We're just doing a quick recap for you guys.
Yeah, a recap, and now we're diving in.
All right, so we start off meeting our FMC Raeve, of course. We meet her as she's impersonating a traveling bard and convincing her way into a tavern where she's showcasing herself as a null, someone with no magic. And then we almost immediately and unknowingly meet our MMC Khan, and he acts rather strangely towards her. I mean, I know as a romantasy reader, the first time I read this book, I had a lot of preconceived notions about what our Fae characteristics are. So when he immediately like stiffens and smells her, I was like, oh my gosh, are they mates? Does he think she's her mate? What did you guys think?
Totally.
Oh my God,
absolutely.
Did you click into that fast? Because I did.
Oh, yeah.
What?
She's well seasoned with these books.
Too well seasoned, I guess.
Well seasoned. No, I thought so too. I was like, okay, so we have visceral reactions to contact and proximity. And that always is sort of like okay, well, there's something here that we're going to find out about later.
100%. I mean, I actually love that the twist in this book is that that's not actually what it was.
Right. Exactly. Spoiler.
But also, you guys, like, I just want to make a candle that smells like Con. That's actually why.
You know what? Does it
Because
exist? If it doesn't exist, we could do it.
That would be amazing because
Wait,
the
a
way
fantasy podcast, cocktails and candles and crystals? I don't know,
I mean,
guys.
We're already branching
Look at
out
it.
past
We're scaling.
cocktails, and it's only episode 1.
Excellent.
No, but the way that Sarah Parker describes his scent so intensely, I mean, she describes everything so intense, and I love it. But I'm like, I need this candle so that I can light it while I'm reading this book.
All right, we're going to let you dabble and try and create a candle. Future author and candle maker, Allie.
We love it. Okay, but we later find out that it's not exactly the case, and he thinks he's seeing and perhaps smelling a ghost?
I know. Oh, my heart breaks for him every time I think about what he goes through. We'll talk about that more later. But
okay, to come.
Next, we meet the other bard, Levy, which unfortunately later we find out that she sells her out for money to Rexaros. I mean, what were your first impressions of Levy?
I mean, I think this is more of a general comment. I'm just sort of like, it seems like such a missed opportunity to dive into a character arc that we didn't really get to see. So I feel like, I don't know, is she supposed to come back around in the next book? Like, I don't know. Is it just like only served the purpose to sort of like ignite further, you know, anger, resentment, need for revenge out of our leading lady?
But she doesn't. That's what's interesting to me is Raeve kind of is just like, oh, she did what she had to do because she's pregnant and she's a, you know, an annul.
Which is interesting because the only thing that makes her different from other people is that she's pregnant. So that too gave me a little bit of a like, oh, okay, she has a little bit of a sympathy, empathy for
the downtrodden.
The downtrodden, but also
she's
the
like
mother.
A knoll.
Yeah. So for me, I was like, oh, is she a mother? In my mind, I was like, okay, it's kind of like it was okay because she had to protect her child. So she did what she had to do to protect her child was what made it different than she did what she had to do to protect herself, in my mind at least.
And I think Raeve has a really big soft spot for children in general because that's her whole like first
whole
mission,
thing. Yeah,
right?
totally.
Where she,
You're right.
Like, was like, Fierdy Ath, you do this, you go save these kids, and I've got this dude.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm gonna take him out.
Yeah.
He's the trash. Gotta do what I gotta do. Like,
save the kids, take out the trash.
100%.
So I do think you're onto something. Maybe she did have sympathy for her because she was pregnant, and she was like, yeah, maybe you did need the payday, girl, but like, sucks.
Yeah. So moving on, they sing Ballad of the Fallen Moon, which the first time I read this book, I kind of just skated over. I was like, okay, they're singing some like local song, whatever. The second and third time I've read this book, it is so heavily, like such intense foreshadowing. Like
loaded.
The whole book, the whole song is about a cyber scythe who brought back to life its moon plume friend.
And what an Easter egg.
What an Easter egg.
Like,
it's so insane because we later find out this is basically how her moon plume saved her.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's right there in the first like 10 pages of the book.
Which is wild.
If you're not like watching the video, I'm like clutching pearls. Like, oh.
We gasped.
We gasped. I mean, also the song is important in other ways to her and Con. We learn later in the story, and to her and Fallon later in the story. But like just the actual content of the song was so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's so beautiful and beautifully written. And again, the musicality of Sarah Parker's writing style is just, it's iconic that the song Ballad of a Fallen Moon would be the thing that sort of is such a foreshadowing for the rest of what's to come.
And I think book 2 is actually called Ballad of Something Dragons.
See, this makes sense to me.
I can't remember the title. We'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
She's a genius.
I know it's Ballad of Something. So after they sing, we learn also that the real reason she's there is to kill Tarek Raelkin for the fear Daath and for herself. It's really more of a mission for herself, and she's kind of forcing the rebellion group into doing it, which I kind of love. And she lures Tarek out of the tavern, takes off her iron ring, and surprise, that's the first time we learn that she's actually not a Knoll and that she hears the voice of Claude. And here we learn just how really bloodthirsty and numb Raeve can really be. She knolls him, cuts off his oxygen, cuts off his hand, and then carves letters of his crimes into his body. This is not like a quick murder.
Well done. She took out the
dives
trash,
you
man.
in pretty quick.
It really do. You go from being like, oh, she's just like this like cool protagonist, like she's like fucking vicious.
She's
She
like,
is vicious. Not just
why
one
are you
Scarlet
doing
letter.
this?
Every letter.
All the letters.
Yeah, and I don't think Tarek is really relevant to this story other than showing us just how like ruthless she can be, and
agree.
that she does have a certain set of morals she believes in, even though she's fine with murdering people.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
not all people.
But not,
all people.
all people. Also, to go back, I did look it up. The next book is called The Ballad of Falling Dragons.
Oh,
Ballad of Falling Dragons. So
Amazing.
good. I can't wait to even understand what that title means.
I know, me too. Okay.
So then, I just brought this up because I just thought it was such a cool thing in the book. She does the coolest thing in the world to me after disposing of his body. She rips off her entire top layer of her dress, and all of a sudden she's just spotless.
Oh my God, no, I thought the same thing. I was like, what? Like, she is so methodical in her planning that she was like, boop.
I've
all
never
right,
seen that
now
in a
I can
romantic
walk
scene
down
before.
the street. And I was like, girl, you are brilliant.
It's amazing. Is Sarah Parker a mom?
I actually don't know.
Because I feel like I thought about you guys now that you're saying that. I'm like, both of you guys are moms. And you know that time when you're like, I wish I just had an underlayer on this that I could just rip off. Like a nice little quick change like we do on the Broadway. Just a little quick change. I'm a new person. I'm a different character, different day. Let's keep it going.
Whole new day.
100%.
Yeah, no,
I just
that's so
love that
true.
little detail in the book. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't really need to
Change.
be there.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
it could have been described any other way, but it's just such a cool thing I've never seen in romanticy
Yeah.
before.
No, I love
Well
it.
done.
Next, she runs into Khan, and he's still majorly confused
Give me
by
a
what he
candle.
is smelling because he can't see her face. She's wearing, this veil. And for some reason she can't understand. She doesn't kill him, and she lets him go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, first reading it, we're all kind of like, she has secret mate feelings or whatever it is.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
of course. He
yeah,
smells
whenever the
smells good.
FMC, and the MMC meet, it's always like, well, of course they hate each other, but they have to let each other live.
good. Yeah, he smells good, so I'm not gonna kill him.
I love
Like
that that's kind of her rationale, though. She literally is just kind of like, well, I guess he's not as big of a douchebag as I thought he was, so I guess he can.
Right, because he'd smell differently.
He would. Not like all males.
Not like
Yeah.
all males.
Not like the guy she just murdered and chopped up into bits and then threw over the wall.
Yeah, he smelled not great.
Yeah, I think
No.
that, like, in that chapter, there was a line to where maybe this male is different. And I was like, oh, okay.
Maybe this male
You
is
have a low
different.
bar for being different, but okay.
Well, I don't know, guys. Smelly men are not really very attractive. So,
Fact.
It's true.
you know what I mean?
Okay, so then in chapter 5, it kind of seems like nothing really happens in it. There's not much movable plot line other than Raeve unwinding and meditating after the kill. However, I do think that chapter is incredibly huge foreshadowing for that her moon plume soul is actually residing next to hers. It's one of those things on a first read, you're kind of like, why does this chapter exist? And then on a second read, you're like, oh my gosh, she's daydreaming about flying through the sky and about being a dragon. And she, and I quote, is picturing myself as a dragon, wings outstretched. I tip and churn through the puffy faint clouds so far above the world that all I hear is my heartbeat. It's just so beautiful. And this is just like one of very many long list of things I've tapped throughout this book, just being like, this is a hill I will die on. That Slatra is like inside of her.
Oh my God, I absolutely agree. Wait, can we deep dive into that right now?
Oh, yeah, a little
because
bit, yeah.
I believe that, remember when Healer was looking through her and they were like, there's this silvery piece in her heart that like they have not seen before. I am convinced that that is the final missing piece that Confor,
Oh my God.
and
I
it's
didn't even
literally
think about
within
that.
her. It's
Shard
in her
is
heart.
literally in her.
It's in her heart. And so I think that, yeah, guys, okay, well, here we go. Here
I
we go.
know.
This is my theory. So I think that Slatra is 100% within her. I actually think that I think, Alex, we talked about this, that the other might be like Slatra and
The
her
other
sort of like taking the lead with that. But I think Slatra's the one that is keeping her alive with her shard in her heart and like brought her back. And I think that's the missing piece that I am convinced that is within her. And that's what that is.
This is all hill we're going to die on. And we're going to talk
dying on
about
this
it
10 out of 10.
every episode. We're going to talk about it so much.
We're going to talk about it every episode. You're welcome. You heard it here
because
first.
there's so much
that's what this whole
foreshadowing.
segment is, threads of theory. So like,
Yeah.
dang.
There we go.
But like
Boom.
literally there's so much foreshadowing for that. It's kind of insane.
It's insane.
And yeah. So we'll just keep talking about it eventually.
Yeah.
But that's our initial thoughts on that. We then meet Ruse and get our first visit to the Curly Quill, which seems to be a front for other businesses here in the city. Like it looks like an apothecary, but it's also like a weapons run and probably sells like poisons and stuff. It's like going to a CVS that secretly deals in weapons.
Yeah.
And we also meet Uno here, which will kind of become important slightly later on in the book, and we'll cover him there. We just kind of like see that he exists here.
Yeah.
And then we learn Serene lives above the Curly Quill, who is the leader of the Fear Death. And she calls Raeve up for a meeting. We learn that while Serene is helping head a revolution, her methods can be less than savory. She has a vial of blood that controls all of her subjects, including Raeve. And I feel like that's going to be really important for future books.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because no one can control Raeve. She's so uncontrollable except for this one woman who claims to be doing good, but everyone, whenever other people talk about her, it is always with like that woman's a nasty piece of work, you know?
Yeah.
She's definitely slithery.
Very
Literally,
slithery.
that's what I was going to say. Like, that's how they describe her, like a serpent. Like,
Yeah. She's definitely
Venomous.
slithery. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she's going to be a bigger character later on in the series. This is, for people listening, it has not been officially announced how many books there are, but it has been speculated that there's 5.
Okay.
I really want a prequel so bad.
Or we're going to get
I think
more
we're-
flashbacks as
I
she
think
gets
we're
her
getting
memory.
right. I think you're going to get your version of prequel, like as she hopefully regains her memory and starts putting these pieces together. The retelling of everything is going to be, and the learning of, you know, the other people that are in her life that had this other narrative they thought this is what happened to her are also going to learn. And I think that's going to be.
I totally
I'm so
agree.
excited.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
I think we won't need a prequel by the time the series is done.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe.
I mean, perhaps a prequel for Kaisari. That would be awesome.
But maybe we might get some more of that. We don't know yet.
Yeah. Because yes, correct.
We're so
We
early
don't.
on.
I know.
Yeah. So during this meeting with Serene, she tells Raeve that Rek Zaros, a known bounty hunter, Raeve already knows who he is in the city, and that she is under no circumstances to kill this man. And of course, Raeve is terrible at listening. But we also get in this section, the big quote from this series that readers really love to put on like t-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff, that broken things make the sharpest weapon.
There it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so many things in there. It's so loaded.
It's so
It is.
loaded.
It is so beautiful. It also goes back to that, you know, icy thing that's in her chest. It's broken, but it's, you know, there's so many things, guys.
The icy lake.
The icy lake.
The
Oh
icy
yeah,
lake.
we didn't really talk about that
We will.
because
We
yeah,
definitely will.
all right. Let's continue on.
Continuing.
On Rave's journey home, we see her first mention her favorite moon, Hayes Perch, which in fact is her brother, and she doesn't remember him. And
That ripped me to shreds.
but when you
was like,
first read it, you just are like, oh, she loves like, you know, the underdog. She loves, of course, she loves this little wonky moon that
Which
like has
is
a broken
also
wing.
true. Yeah. And with a broken
Which actually goes
wing.
back to her, like, loving and wanting to save the Knoll children
Yes.
who are being abused and stuff like that. So I feel that is like a big part of her personality. And then it's also mirrored in the like wonky moon. And I'm like,
And I wonder if that's why she's like that, is because of her brother and how like disadvantaged
I would think so.
she was.
Yeah,
to be.
I would think so. Yeah.
Because he was also a Knoll.
Yeah.
In the diaries, we find out he never heard the elemental songs. So I think she's fiercely protective of people who cannot protect themselves.
Amen.
Amen.
All right.
I know. Okay, so now she gets home and we finally meet Essie. And she has her lovely Butterman loaf ready. Yay, cheers to our lovely cocktail.
Cheers. Yes.
salud.
Yep.
We also just talk about how bad I want to try that loaf. Like,
The Butterman
Absolutely.
loaf.
oh my God, the way
Absolutely.
that it's described, I'm like
I
what
definitely
even
feel
is
like Alex
this?
could make that up. Like I think
But
Alex
I don't
might
know
be
even
able
like
to
what
make
it
that.
is. Is it just like a super buttery bread? I think so.
I think so, with some berries. I mean,
Like I was almost
Sounds
picturing
great.
like a butter pound cake.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys.
Or something. I don't know.
Delicious. Can you taste it? I can.
I mean, I definitely can. It looks so good.
Yes,
or
but
sounds so good. It doesn't look so good. It sounds so
Well,
good.
it looks
so
good in
in
our
your
mind.
It looks
Yeah.
good in our minds, yes, in our imaginations.
But also, besides baked goods, she also loves to cook up some other cool things.
Whatever happened? Like, can I just say it? Like, whatever. Did she just burn down the tooth that she was making her?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
she burned everything.
Yeah. The
Because
diamond.
that was the whole
yeah.
line about the Spangle shit.
Yeah.
To where
Right.
she was like, but it's still Spangle shit.
So let's backtrack because we're like about to talk about this.
Oh my gosh.
So we meet Essie, and she has the butterman loaf and bogsberry preserve ready for her. And we find out that Essie is a gnoll who taught herself how to be a Bruni. So that just already tells me that Essie's pretty intelligent, because not
Very
every
smart.
gnoll can become a Rooney.
Very smart.
And not only that, but she makes all of these gadgets for Raeve with the spangle shit.
Spangle shit.
I can't with the spangle shit.
It's amazing.
I think that's
so
maybe
smart.
a part I could have also done without. I kind of agree with Raeve. Could it have been something else? Maybe.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's something we talk about. It's like broccoli.
It is like
Yeah.
broccoli. Except for broccoli's adorable.
Yeah,
Not-
but
not
also
disgusting.
Spangle
magical
shit, not
things
so
in
much.
your poop.
Spangle shit, not so much. So, when we meet Essie, I think this interaction just really shows us how truly broken and emotionally stunted Raeve is. I mean, just a few chapters ago, Raeve said, "Sadness is like stones that stack inside you, making it harder to move. Ignorance is my self-preservation tonic, and I'll swear by it until I die."
Oh boy.
Like, the way she pushes Essie away is really rough.
It's
Just like seconds kind of before she dies.
Literally.
rough.
Doing
It's-
something that she was doing for Raeve.
Yeah. I mean, but it just shows like truly her incapacity to love. So when we do see her actually meet Khan later on, you understand why she pushes him away so intensely.
Yes,
Yeah.
she
I think
is
that's kind
what we
of
would
Essie's
call emotionally
reason.
unavailable.
Oh yeah. So emotionally unavailable. Like the most emotionally unavailable character to have ever lived. Yes. And then we also, on a different note though, we meet Nee, who's a parchment lark, and Raeve has adopted her like a pet. And Raeve has no idea why Nee came to her and won't leave. But it's the most emotion we see her show anything is to a tiny piece of paper. Like she can't show emotion to to fae beings.
Yeah.
But she shows this emotion to this tiny piece of parchment
Yes.
lark
Yes.
that just says, "I need you" on it.
Yeah.
And I just think it's another way that Parker, like, really, it just shows us, like, how emotionally damaged this woman is. Like,
Yeah.
she cannot show love to something that can show her love back.
Right,
Yeah.
because perhaps, that saying, you accept the love you think you deserve, that
Right.
whole type of thing. It doesn't mean that she doesn't feel those emotions. She just doesn't express them and actively fights
She
against
shoves them down into
Yeah.
her icy lake.
Into her
Yeah.
icy lake.
She
Yeah.
literally.
Which is less of a metaphor, I think, and an actual icy lake inside of her body.
I agree. I think it's an actual icy lake inside of her body.
Yeah. Maybe
Agreed.
it's the
I mean,
moon
I think-
shard.
Maybe it's
Later
the moon shard,
on.
guys.
we realize that it's more like a little bit less metaphoric and a little more literal.
Yeah.
Because it definitely sounds like a metaphor at first.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then by the end of the book, you're like, oh no, like she literally can look inside herself and like see this,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Also, like,
a very cool
Must
storytelling.
get into like a meditative state to be like,
Yes.
Well, she does meditate,
Yeah.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
great.
which is, I love that about her. She's such
do
a
too.
fucking hot mess, but she meditates.
She's like, you
it's
know
called
what?
balance. Yeah. She said, I will carve the letters of the things that you have done into your body, but then I will also just find my zen when I need to.
I love it so much. All right, we're going to pause our Raeve thread because this is where we get our first chapter from Khan's point of view. Yes, I know.
Not me fanning myself. No.
I know.
Allie is smelling him currently.
She really is. Honestly, this is, I think, also one of the most important chapters in the book, and you don't even know how important it is until you get to the end of the book because it's the first and pretty much only time you meet Kazari.
No,
Yeah.
literally. You don't
Yeah.
realize how important this chapter is until like virtually the end, and you're like, holy crap. Like, are you serious right now? Like, this
Yeah.
is a complete callback, and now everything makes so much sense.
I love that.
So
I love
because
when
this
books do that.
chapter is so important, I'm going to just do like bullet points of the things we learned because there's a lot of details that I think are going to be really important later on in the
Great.
books.
Let's go.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we're just going to brush on a few things. Kizari is the wearer of the Otherstone after Elwyn died. She's the only wearer we know of who can hear Salas speaking. No other wearer has really said that before. She said he's in great turmoil and she's fallen in love with him and wants to release and save him. Yikes. Because of all this, and I'm assuming her father, she's taken a vow of celibacy and devoted herself to the creators, which means she can't marry anyone. This is like their religion. She's almost 100 phases old, so Elwyn has been dead for about 100 phases. She insinuates she knows something more than that Salas has told her, but leaves Khan before he can get it. I mean, this whole interaction is just so loaded with information.
I mean, it really is.
That feels like the plot line for the rest of the series. Like, forget what the plot line of this book is. That right there feels like the plot line for the rest of the series.
I agree.
And it's crazy that we don't even know it's happening when I almost feel like we can't even begin to unpack how heavy this chapter is until we get the next books.
Yeah,
Like, I feel like we'll go back to this chapter and be like, this!
Yeah, for sure.
I think this part for me was a little bit, I mean, it's a crazy filled with Easter eggs, but I think for me, I was clocking in this chapter that obviously, as you said, that Kizari is almost 100 phases old and she's wearing the stone. So obviously that means that Elwyn has been dead for about 100 years because there's only one stone and it passes through the line. So there was already this connection of their relationship and sort of what that relationship could be in my mind. So that's a huge, huge hint into what could potentially come. But this is the one and only time that we hear it.
100%. So, I mean, I think that's as much as we can't even do more with the information because we don't have more information.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, but also in this chapter, I don't remember Elwyn being referred to. I think that's just something that you can kind of infer to later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of the journal entries and then knowing
yeah.
that Elwyn gets the
stone. Yeah. Yeah.
Wild.
Very wild.
Do we know why she goes to Khan?
She's running away.
We don't, other than she's running away. It's something common that happens a lot. She seems to not get along with her father. No shit.
Obviously.
And I mean,
Who
also
does?
just the foreshadowing of that Khan is more of a father figure to her is just
is absolutely wild. And while the rest of this world believes that he is evil and terrible, she actually does know the truth about him, that she's going to him to ask him for help and for sort of like protection in a certain way. So it's interesting that there is sort of a level of intimacy and trust there that we have to insinuate exists. But what does that mean? Can't wait to find out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so much.
Yeah.
So after this, we go back to Raeve and we get her first really heavily foreshadowing that something even more traumatic has happened to her. She is having a dream where she was having a nightmare that was melting flesh from my bones in slow, sizzling sweeps.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely get the sense that she's, afraid of fire. Something has happened to her. We have no idea what it is. She just has intense trauma, and we get a lot of this foreshadowing throughout the book, but this is like the first time where we really understand that it keeps her up at night, and it's like, it's deep-seated. It's not just like this passing thing. Something very traumatic happened to her, and in a very Sarah Parker way, we're going to get little like dust motes along the storyline until we finally understand what it is.
Yeah.
And then this is when the plot really like has its first big moment. Essie is stabbed while Raeve was sleeping and she's dying in their living room.
She made it home.
She made it home. This whole scene is so heartbreaking.
And she was already kind of having feelings about, or Raeve was like, why can't I just say it to her? I love her. Like, obviously, like, I think as like a sister figure.
Yeah.
I mean,
but honestly,
or daughter,
or daughter, or
I thought it could be a stand-in for Kizari, and she just doesn't realize it.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah, any of those things.
Yeah, because obviously she doesn't remember that she has a daughter at this point. So But I do think somewhere those feelings must exist.
Of course.
I wish they existed more.
Yeah.
I
As
do
a
too.
mom, I feel like that was a little bit lacking throughout the whole book, that she, like, this sense of, like, motherhood a little bit more,
But I mean,
like, in a
we-
more obvious way.
We could take it back to like sort of what we touched on earlier about the pregnancy
Yeah.
and the children and how she always wants to save the children. Even that's the only order that she will sort of like break. I mean,
For
she does what
sure.
she's
Those are
told
just
to
more
do.
subtle
And
to
also,
me.
yeah,
Like, if we weren't
Yeah.
deep diving it, I don't know if I would even put those connections together, you
Yeah.
know?
that's fair.
So then she also sets Nee free,
Ugh.
which doesn't
Broke me.
feel
I was so
like
emotionally attached to this parchment lark.
I'm-
Like,
I mean, so is she.
I'm more attached to the parchment lark than anything so far. Like knee, I can't.
also
I can't.
like
This
her
was
little,
devastating.
Like fluttering and then falling to the floor,
And then break it,
pretending
yeah.
like she was hurt. I was like, stop.
Sweet baby.
Sweet baby.
So
baby.
cute.
I know.
Ugh.
And we think that she set Nee free because why?
Because she couldn't be attached to even a piece of paper anymore. I think
Because-
Essie's death
yes.
breaks her.
Yes, and she
And she
wanted
literally-
nothing else.
guys.
She wanted nothing to tether her to anything other than revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Devastating.
Like, it's just
It's devastating.
me, my weapons.
Yeah,
Gonna
I
go
think
kill.
Essie, story-wise, is supposed to be that breaking point of ensuring the reader knows, like, this woman is never going to trust anyone ever again.
Totally. And it's interesting that she sets everything on fire, which fire is the thing that she also
It's fear.
is
She
so
fears.
fearful of.
Yeah.
So in some type of a way, she used the thing that she is most afraid of and then released this thing that we are now introduced to, right? Which Parker calls the other.
But I also think the reason she did fire is because Essie asked her to. I don't think if Essie hadn't
that's
asked her
fair.
to, she would have done it. And I
Oh,
think
right.
she
What did she s-
overcame her fear for her.
Yeah, she said she didn't want to go back. She didn't want
To
to
the
freeze.
cold.
Yeah. She didn't
Yeah.
wanna be
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so then we get
My
our
whole
first
heart-
taste
like
of the other.
All of this is just so absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
All of it. It's just chapter after chapter is just complete devastation for Raeve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if Parker's gonna harp so much on her, and we'll get into this later, but like the constant sort of, I don't deserve love, I can't love anything, I don't deserve love, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve kindness. It sort of does set it up in a way where you're like, okay, well, like, okay, makes sense.
Yeah, no. Totally.
Yeah. So then we get our first taste of the other.
Ooh, scary.
Yes.
Y'all.
And Raeve somehow becomes more bloodthirsty than she was before. I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah.
She literally wants to eat people, and she chases down Zek and his people seeking revenge, which unfortunately is exactly Rex's plan to lure her in. But during this segment, we also, surprise, we learn she can also speak to Boulder. But she's just not as talented as speaking to Boulder. She has more of an affinity to Claude. And then we get my least favorite part of the book where she bites off Zek's finger.
And it just lingers.
For why? Like,
And
why
it just
did we
lingers.
do that?
I think it's because she's a dragon. The other's a dragon, and she's
Yes,
just
I
like,
agree. It's
I'm
just
gonna
like,
eat
"Rawr."
people. Like, we know that, like, at least in this kingdom, that's like a punishment for people, is that they get eaten by dragons. So it's not
Yeah.
like in other series where dragons are like, oh, humans are a little gamey. It's like
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
dragons like to eat fae,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she's just she bites off his fucking finger.
She
Yeah,
does.
and then she even recalls to it and she's like, I don't even want to know what I feel in my teeth. And I'm like,
Ew, absolutely disgusting. Yeah, nope, no thank you. Not flesh floss, you know?
oh,
That is a word I don't think I ever need to hear again.
Flesh floss. Floss of flesh. Yeah, disgusting. Absolutely
Rex
disgusting.
Zaros.
Yeah.
I know.
So obviously she gets captured. She wakes up and the other is gone, and she's like, what the hell happened? But it kind of seems like it's not something that hasn't happened before. She definitely
Yeah.
alludes to the fact that this is not the first time she's woken up with flesh in her teeth, which is also concerning that she's not more concerned about it.
Yeah. How
She's very
how
like,
often
sure.
do we think it's happened? Do we think it's happened a lot? Do we think she can pinpoint every time it's happened?
I mean, she's
Probably.
been alive for like 20-ish phases. I think it's like 23 or something. I don't
Yeah.
remember what the exact math is. But so I
Yeah.
would assume it's happened quite a bit. That's
Yeah.
23,000 days.
Yeah. Fair.
So, because
Yeah.
you have to remember their years are longer than ours.
Yeah.
Their
They
years are 1,000 years. Days
Yeah.
long.
1,000
So-
1,000 days. It's a
I
lot.
do think it's happened probably quite a bit. And it probably happened quite a bit because she's so nonchalant about it. She's just like, oh, yeah,
That happened.
that happened.
Like, again, my head hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The flesh floss. Yeah.
Then they take her to a new cell. They hold her prisoner. While she's in her cell, of course, fate would have it. Who comes into the prison disguised but Khan?
Yes.
And we find out from her cell roommate, like person next to her, that he's hunting moon shards.
Yes.
Which is so sweet. We don't know why he's doing it when we find out about it, but it's just one of those other things that like you're just like, Khan, why are you so fucking perfect? I don't.
Just
Going back to what Ashley said earlier about the moon shard. So even as you had just said Khan was hunting moon shards, and ironically, there is Raeve probably
potentially found one.
Her.
Yeah.
I mean, he does kind of say that. He's kind of like, I found what I'm looking for actually now.
Yeah.
Like later on.
Yeah.
Oh, which is
And
so
also,
interesting.
He had said, I will hunt you for as long as it possibly takes in this life. And I'm like,
Oh, fascinating. I wonder if
so
he
that's
knows.
so interesting.
I don't know that he knows, as more of it's just maybe foreshadowing for the reader.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
like
I agree.
one of her little
agree.
like nuggets. So also during the scene where Khan finds her in the prison, he finally sees her face and recognizes her and starts calling her Moonbeam, which was his nickname for Eowyn.
Yes.
She also deduces that he's a king, but she can't place which one he is. And then they whisk her away to her trial. And of course, Khan then alludes to her being the new thing he wants instead of the moon shard. And that's where the chapters end.
I know these next ones. I'm like, it's so juicy.
Right. So that is the end of our Threads of Theory section for this stretch of chapters.
Woo-hoo! So many things. So many things.
So many things. I can't wait to keep deep diving this book. And then our last segment for each episode for right now is going to be our Roses outline, or our Court of Thorns and Roses, if you will, where we say a rose, thorn, bud, and trim for this section of chapters.
Rose being,
so if people don't play this game at home with their families, this is something we love to do this at the dining room table at night. You say the rose is like the best part of your day and the thorn is the worst part of your day. The bud is something you're looking forward to and the trim is something you could have done without.
perfect.
Okay, so I'll start with my first rose. I think my favorite part of the beginning of the book is really just overall getting to know Rave's sarcasm. The way she acts about things like murder and conveniencing her is kind of disturbing, but it's very funny. Just like learning her character. Like, I don't see that as much as in an FMC and other books, just like truly how sarcastic and like humorous she is. One of my favorite quotes is, "You can reshape a turd an infinite number of times, but it's still a turd and it still stinks."
Words of wisdom.
Shit.
Bullshit.
Which I think might be my like new favorite insult. Like some
Spangle
spangle
shit.
Yeah, should we start using that in everyday life?
Spangle shit. Yeah.
100%.
I'll just scream it to the people crossing the street in New York. Spangle shit.
Please do. Someone will get a kick out of it, I'm sure.
Allie, what's your rose?
Okay, so overall, I think my rose of like the whole thing is how beautiful the writing is. Like, I love how detailed it is. And I also really like how throughout the entire book, here's this question, and then that question gets answered, and then there's like two more questions in between that you're just like, oh, now there's two more. But I also really like it because I think it keeps me really engaged and following and like wanting to know what's next. But similar to Alex, the prologue through chapter 22, I think it's Rave's nonchalance about murder and killing people and how she's just like, it is an absolute massive inconvenience that I have to take out the trash in the city, and how like she's just like, this is so frustrating. Like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to be so good at this that you want me to do this? Like,
Yeah. My rose, just to piggyback off that, one of the things I think I mentioned it earlier that I loved about When the Moon Hatched is the writing itself, especially coming off something like Onyx Storm or even ACOTAR series. I remember messaging you and being like, whoa, she writes so musically just after I had read the prologue. There's this like gorgeous flow to her prose in the world building, which with so much alliteration and almost this like poetic quality that felt really refreshing to me. It sort of elevated the story in a way, and I appreciated that. And that said, I also recognize that the kind of writing can be a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it veers into like overly ornate territory. But for
It's
me,
very
like
Tolkien
having
to
read,
me.
yeah, and
Like,
for me having read the
he
whole
was
book,
way worse. Like he would describe a tree for like 5 pages.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, but I loved Tolkien. That was
But I
like
do
my OG
feel-
childhood fantasy series.
But it is very descriptive, and sometimes it can be
is.
too much for people.
I
For
agree.
sure.
And I think now reading the whole book, I think it worked more than it didn't. And I think also now reading the whole book, but I mean, just to not talk too much about it, I think surprisingly, I actually really enjoyed the slow build of this romantasy in comparison to some of the other things that sort of dive right into like the smut, or you know exactly what's going to happen from the beginning. I feel like I've gotten impatient in other books with the wait, but the tension and the pacing here are just going to make the payoff sort of more earned, despite wishing it didn't take as long as it did. I think, you know, once you get to a certain point in this book, I read the rest of it in one sitting. So I think looking back, the pacing was actually something that it makes the payoff better. So that's,
No, I totally
with
get
me.
that.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
yeah.
All right, let's move on to our thorns. So for me, for this stretch of chapters, my thorn is Essie dying, but probably not for the reason most people would think. I mean, obviously it's tragic that she dies. But my problem with it is that I feel like as readers, we don't get to know Essie well enough for her death to be as tragic to us. Like, it's super tragic to Raeve, and I understand that for her.
Yep.
But, like, for me, I was kind of like, cool, this random chick I barely got to meet died. Like,
Yeah.
I do wish
Yeah.
her storyline was just more involved with Raves in the beginning, or maybe she was like with her on these journeys or something. Like maybe she was at the
Right.
tavern like as her like wing woman or something. Like I just wish
Right.
we'd gotten to know her way more.
Right.
Well, no.
Yeah,
did-
but
they
like literally we meet her in one chapter and she dies the next, and it's like, was I supposed to care about her? Because
Right, but
I
there was
think I was
a
supposed
point
to.
where they talked about, didn't they talk about how Raeve sort of rescued her from,
Yeah.
you know, from her life before. So, but that's really all we got.
That's all you get. So that's my
And then the
thorn.
hint of her being like, I don't want to be back in the cold when I die. Like, don't put me.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Allie, what's your
Allie, what
thorn?
about you?
Honestly, pretty much the same. It is more of like a tear between like Essie being murdered, but we created like, even if it was a minor connection, it was still a connection, but she was murdered as bait.
Yeah.
And I was like that is just gutting to me. Like she was basically just like chum in the water to get Raeve out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then the secondary one was Nee being sent away.
Yes,
Like
yes.
Nee, like her just being like, you gotta go. I'm like, it's no.
yeah.
That's all you've
Terrible.
got at this point, girl.
I know. Ashley,
Terrible.
what was your
I mean, Essie and Nee, for sure. It was devastating. And I personally, as you guys know, I always care more about the animals or the non-human, non-fae companions than the fae or the humans.
Yeah.
There's clearly more to Nee's story, Essie as well as Essie's, but Essie obviously meant everything to Raeve, and losing her sort of felt like the one thread of unconditional love that Raeve had, that it was, you know, had left, was like yanked away.
Yeah.
And died with her. And then Nee being sent away right after, it was just like an emotional whiplash that just like wrecked me. But
sure.
also, like, real talk, Rave's constant inner monologue about how she doesn't deserve love. I get it. It's part of her trauma. And I have people in my own life like that. But like people who have been through it, who have been through a lot, and because they haven't processed it, they keep making these choices that like drive you nuts. So I understand it on a human level. But as a reader, it did get somewhat frustrating. Like, girl, we fucking get it. You're emotionally blocked.
monotonous.
Like
Yeah.
move on. But I also recognize that's kind of the point, right? If you don't do the work, you don't heal. If you don't
Right.
like remember what it was that started this whole thing, you have to go back to the beginning. And so even though I wanted to like shake her sometimes, I felt that this is real, and it's sort of, you know, building up to, it's really a metaphor for us in real life too, you know. If we
Yeah,
don't do the
totally.
work, we don't get the reward.
100%.
Yeah. What is your bud, Alex?
Okay, so my bud is that I'm looking forward to seeing more of Kazari in the next books. We don't really get much of her or her story here, and I feel like her journey discovering her mother and falling in love with Salus is all obviously super essential to the story. And while I feel like it's my bud, it's a little bit of my thorn too, because I think her story hints need to be dropped more throughout this book. Like I know we were talking on the side earlier about how like when you see her in the last epilogue, you almost forgot she existed. Like it's like almost too much of a surprise of like, I remember when I read it the first time, I had to go back and be like, wait, who even is that? Like, because they also just allude to her so much when talking about how like Eowyn left someone behind. They never say her name. I think if she'd even just said her name throughout the story of like that's who we knew that she was talking about when we got to the end, I would have been much more concerned in knowing what was happening with Kazari. So I am excited to just see more of her story as the whole series unfolds.
I mean, interestingly too, like how we touched on earlier, maybe she's meant to just feel like she's like passing through. Because in the earlier scene where we first met her and Khan in the bar, it just felt like she was stopping there to go to her next place. So it's almost just maybe Sarah Parker doesn't necessarily want us to think about her too much.
Oh no, I think
Absolutely.
she didn't want us to think about her, but for me, she seems so central to the story for us to like not. It just felt like a weird juxtaposition to me of like this chapter in the beginning, this chapter of the end with absolutely nothing in between. Like,
no, I get that.
It just felt weird.
But it is sort of like a bookend to a very pivotal like, character. I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
All right, what is your guys' bud?
I really want to see Raeve helping the Knoll children again. Like, I feel like that was such a big point of her entire existence, at least in like these chapters. I kind of want to see her do that more.
Yeah.
I think we will. Lost in revenge.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But that's old her. I think we're going to start meeting new her when
in book 2.
Yeah. I think for my bud, what I'm most looking forward to is a few things, but learning more about Rave's powers and her connection to the moon and also to Slatra's play in all of this, like what the hatching actually means for her and then for the world. There's clearly a much like bigger destiny at play, and I'm excited to see her really step into that, especially now that we've seen glimpses of her strength, but she's still holding herself back emotionally and magically. I just like can't wait for the full unleash moment.
Yeah.
I'm also as well just so very curious about Kazari. I did put together how they may be related early on, just as I also made the connection that like Raeve and Eowyn were one and the same. I just want to know everything, like how that dynamic is going to play out, what she knows, if she has powers, and whether there's like a reunion coming. It just adds like such a rich, like emotional thread to the story, but only at the end.
Yeah.
Especially since, you know, as I said, Raeve is someone who's closed herself off to love and connection, and now that there's this like bond that she doesn't know like exists, like the stakes just feel so high, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Totally.
Like some kind of resolve would be nice. You know what I mean? Not the
eventually
way
we'll get resolved. Probably book 5.
Yeah, exactly. At the end.
All right, so let's do our trims. These are just things we felt like could have been edited out of the story, essentially, because that is one of the critiques of this book from readers, is that it could have used a little bit more editing. So my trim would be, I really just didn't need the detail about her biting off Rex's finger and having the tendon stuck in her teeth and all that. Like, I got how bloodthirsty she was without that detail.
Flesh floss.
Yeah, I got that. I got the sense of Raeve without it going that far. Like, I didn't need that. And it wasn't comic relief, even though we keep talking about it and laughing. Like, reading it was not comic relief.
Yeah, It was disgusting.
Yeah.
Allie, what's your trim?
Okay, so mine is mostly contingent on what happens in future books. So it's just placing it on these initial chapters that we're covering. My trim is Fallon. I'm like, okay, cool. You've brought it up literally in vague sentences twice, but that's it. There's no further detail. And actually, even further on into the story, you barely get any detail about her at all either. And so it doesn't really contribute to the story. So why keep bringing it up occasionally? Like, she was there with her in the prison. Cool.
I mean, I
Right.
think for me, the reason her character exists is to show, like, Fallon's death is what destroyed Raeve the first time. So then when she lost Essie, that's why she went completely numb. Like, I think if Fallon hadn't had died, losing Essie wouldn't have been as much of a character punch to her as it ended up being.
I agree, because it's also that the trilogy too of her brother and her family. It's
But she doesn't
that
remember them right now.
But she
so
doesn't.
like,
Yeah.
So I think
Right,
we
but
needed
we as a
some
reader-
character she's
trauma.
lost. We
Yeah,
needed
but
some
we as a
character
reader-
she's lost before Essie, since she can't remember her family.
That makes sense. I do agree with you that part of my trim is also like some of the side characters because I felt like they were just like there.
Underdeveloped.
But it's so it's tricky because would it really be a trim if I was just kind of like, oh, I want to know more, but like look how, like, I'm literally holding up this book, it is a brick. Like, look how long this book is, and we're here like, but these characters were underdeveloped, like, how dare we? But it's also like, how could we also trim the things that are like planting the seeds for the next?
We just we don't know what those seeds are, so it's hard to say
exactly.
that's not
exactly.
important.
But
And that's also
I'm gonna
why,
say
like,
it one more
my
time.
caveat was like,
Yeah.
depending on the future books.
Right.
Because, like,
Of course.
there may be an absolute recall to Fallon to where she is having massive story points and having, like, whole chapters, you know, which I think would actually be really cool. But early on, I remember thinking, like, okay, if you're not going to go into detail about this girl, like, why are we talking about her?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's my turn.
I'm also going to say one more time that I could have done without all of the repetitive internal monologue of Raeve being like, I don't deserve this. I really know. I get it. It's rooted in her trauma, but I'm like, it slowed the pacing and it made some sections feel heavier than they like already felt.
Mm-hmm.
We get it.
Yeah, it was
it's
like-
valid. It's real. But like
I get it.
every time.
Yeah. I felt that way, I'd say, like, the chapters that we'll probably discuss in like episode 3, like by the time you get like 3/4 of the way of the book, I felt really frustrated by that narrative of just like, dude, I fucking get it, get over it.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. You're
not
right.
get over
It
it,
is-
but like, it's like, I want to see you have an arc and build, and I can't keep hearing you keep saying this. You're not growing at all. Like, why am I continuing to read your story?
Yeah. And I think that was what was so frustrating. Of course, you're right, because I am thinking not just from the prologue to chapter 22, which is what we're covering in here. I am thinking like overall. And it is like a core part of her arc. We get it. But like, it just started to feel a bit excessive at one point in time.
Yeah, I feel like
I agree.
the top of the arc should have come sooner in the book of her healing.
I agree. Yeah. But
All right, well,
But that being said, we
That
have
being
so
said-
many fun things to talk about next week.
we do, and that is our episode. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we went through the whole episode. We did it.
Yes.
This was like take 500, but we did it.
Take 500, computer fail number 17. And the most memorable phrases that we are taking away are flesh floss, spangle shit, and what else?
I think that's all we need.
Flesh floss and spangle shit and a little ASMR. Okay. Amazing, girls.
Tune in next week for our episode diving into chapters 23 through 40.
Woohoo! All right.
And-
Saucy Scribes.
And we'll release our cocktail on our Instagram. Follow us.
Saucy Scribes out.